Now, what happens is when food comes into the system, it turns into glucose, all right, and then that turns into glycogen, all right. Now, this glycogen here goes into two places. It's got the muscle that it sits in for fuel, okay, so that's when you've got to often go, and then you've got your liver. And this here is when we run out of fuel, it gives back fuel. So the glycogen sits in here as an energy form. So with the liver, the glycogen that's in the liver gives you all the fuel you need for just everyday blinking, hair growth, breathing, because every single thing that we do takes energy. So there's nothing that doesn't use fuel. So your lungs, your heart, the blood, everything to move and do what it does needs glycogen for fuel. Now, what happens is when the food goes into glucose and then takes in and goes this way, whatever excess there is, that goes into the fat cell, right? Now, most people overeat in any meal. So if you've got up in the morning and had a massive breakfast, these stores are full. Then at 10:30 you eat again, they're still full because we haven't done anything. Then here comes lunch, here comes afternoon tea, dinner. We have a system full of this. So what happens is, these are full, they can't fill up anymore, and they only take a certain amount in there. So once they're full, that's it. So now we dump it. Now if you can think about this type of thing, with glucose, say you've got a fridge and a freezer, and you fill the fridge with food, and we've got more food to put in, and we've got in a room. So you'll take what will go into the freezer and last you, and open the lid once, put it in, and leave it there. This is what our body does with fuel. So it's like opening the fridge, you stuff it and stuff it and stuff it, and it gets too full. So now we've got to put it into a store. So it's the best way to say it in freezer and fridge. So the freezer is your fat cell, the fridge is your glucose cell, all right? So what happens is, once the glucose gets up and up and up and up and up, the pancreas has two hormones in it. So one's called glycagon, and the other one is called your insulin. Now, so in your pancreas, these are your two hormones. When you eat, this one is triggered. So what happens is, you've got this overweight body, and the more overweight you get, the cells that look like this, that this insulin has to get this into here and lock it in for fuel, this becomes hazy, all right? And it's like a film of fat, and it won't unlock. So what happens is, you eat food, insulin goes, we've got food here, we've got to lock it into a cell, insulin comes out, so you've got all of these glucose running around the system. Insulin has to lock on to these glucoses and open this door and throw this in here. If this is not working properly, your body is insulin resistant. So the insulin comes out, but it can't get it into the cell. So what happens now is we have a body full of glucose, insulin, and it's everywhere. The cells can't open, so what does the brain tell the body? We need fuel. Eat. This is the issue. So there's more fuel, more fuel, more fuel. You're becoming more and more insulin resistant, because the more you use this, you run out of this. This is type 2 diabetes. So by the time you're in this area, it's too late. So now you go to a doctor, they like you to sit under 6, most people. If you're 7, you're a diabetic. So you go to a doctor and you're 6, they'll just keep checking you. You want to be 3s and 4s, you want to be low all the time. The way to have that low is put less of this in. So because when this comes in, this happens. And the more of this, the more of this. So this is the culprit. There is no other culprit for diabetes. It's glucose. They tell you don't eat sugar. So what do people do? They don't put sugar in their tea, they don't put sugar on their cereal, and that's all they know. Because that's what doctors say to you, don't eat sugar. Sugar is in everything except fat and protein. That's it, which is meat-based. It's fat-based. So you go to the doctor and you're now a 7. So they throw you on insulin. That's what they give you because we're not getting insulin to the cell. So it's crazy. You get a drug, which is insulin, and you've got insulin resistance. So now we have more insulin. So now we get hungrier. So all of it backs into the freezer. And people with diabetes gets fatter and fatter and fatter. And after 6 months, you need another drug. And there's 3 main drugs they use. So metformin's the first drug, and then there's 2 other drugs after that they use. Now, you are basically a type 1 diabetic because this is now not working at all. A type 2 can turn into a type 1. So that is how it all comes together. So once you're in this area, you're classed as a diabetic. You're normally on another drug within 6 months. By 10 years, you're on the lot, and those doses keep going up and up and up and up. And because we're putting more of this in here, and you're already insulin resistant, how does it get in here? It doesn't. But their blood sugars come down because it's a drug. Because when insulin's there, it in bloods, it lowers. In the system, it's not. So it's a symptom. High blood sugars is a symptom of diabetes. But say you have an infection of the body, a symptom of an infection is a fever. So if you keep giving your body Panadol, you're not getting rid of the infection at all. You need an antibiotic. With this, it's the same thing. They're giving you a drug for the symptom, but we're not killing the disease. And diabetes is a disease. It's cardiovascular disease comes from it, stroke comes from it, blood pressure comes from it, nerve damage comes from it, vision damage comes from it, skin allergies come from it, Alzheimer's comes from it, dementia comes from it. We've hit everything. So we've got a real problem. With the intermittent fasting, when you start to fast, this becomes empty. So what happens is you have your last meal, say 8 o'clock at night, and you go to bed. Over that next 6-hour period, this and this become empty. The body uses it as the fuel. So you're sleeping, you're dreaming, there's lots happening even though you're not aware of it. The body still has to live, all the living cells are happening, it's got to digest that meal, it's got heaps to do. When you wake up in the morning, this is on 0. So all of this is gone. All right, there's nothing in the system at all, and this doesn't have to work. This is asleep, this is not present. So all we have from that is emptiness. So your liver's empty and the muscle group has none either. We have no fuel, all right? So what happens now is once the fuel is completely gone, this here comes into play because this is the other hormone. And it says to the liver, we have no fuel. There is no fuel here. Have you heard of fatty liver? Fatty liver is one of the problems for diabetes. The first thing it does, now say I'm an overweight diabetic and I decide to go on this, all right? And it's type 2 diabetes. And I go on to this tomorrow. When I get up, this is all empty. Now, with a diabetic, they're normally eating 24/7. They're getting up in the night to eat. They're hungry because their cells aren't getting the food. And this is the sad part. They've got no idea. They don't get it and they're not taught it. And they're just starving and they're getting bigger, they're getting sicker, they're on the drugs, go back to the doctor, here's another drug, we're going to up this drug, and it's just chaos for them. They've never got fuel. They'll always say they're tired, and it's not how you lose weight. So you're just battling and you're going nowhere. So what happens is they're empty like everybody else, and this becomes empty and this becomes empty. Now their body turns on to this hormone, but they have a fatty liver. So the first thing it clears up is this liver. The liver will clean itself up before it does anything. So we need this hormone to tell the liver, clean yourself up. Because if we don't have this hormone and we have this hormone, this gives us fatty liver. This here and here. That's what gives you fatty liver. Now, fatty liver used to be an alcoholic's disease. There's now 8 and 9-year-olds with it. They're not alcoholics, so they now know it's carbohydrate based, which is good. As sad as it is, and we've got kids with it, this educates the society, because everyone was told, get off fats. We were brainwashed. Everyone's brainwashed. I brainwashed my kids. You do. Get off fat, get on fruit, veg, get on your pastas, get on your rice. That's how it was. Everybody got off the fat. Everyone started living the great lifestyle, and everyone got overweight. We've got an epidemic of every disease. It's way worse now than ever. We've got diabetes like we've never had it. Now, in 2000, and you told people there was cholesterol, say. People would go, oh, what's cholesterol? And then you'd explain it. Now, when people say I've got cholesterol, this is where diabetes is going. In 2040, there's 80% of the population with diabetes, and we just become normal to what we're hearing a lot of. So what you hear about, society just become based to that. It's like anything, you watch the news and the stories on it don't shock us anymore, but they did 20 years ago because there's so many of them. So you're desensitised to everything, and yeah, so we've really got a problem with it. But once glycagon is in play, which is what you want, she cleans up here, the fatty liver. Once that fatty liver is cleaned, as this cleans, this cleans. All right, now this is really powerful and beautiful stuff. So now we are shedded the system of glucose and garbage and toxins. So now the liver picks up free fatty acids. So what happens now is the fat cell is now being triggered to open up. All the fat stores come out, and now you have ketones. So now the ketones are running the system, and now we can get fuel in cells. The beautiful thing with fat is it's 9 calories per gram. Now, if we don't, so vegans, you've got a small vegan, all right? They're living on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is 4.5 per gram. So this is fat and this is carb. So a vegan is running on a 4.5 per gram for fuel. This is running on 9 calories. So we got 4.5 calories to 9. So which one would you rather run on? So once you know this too, vegans really need to get this, because they do it for a better lifestyle and they do it for a better body and for better health. But carbohydrates give you diabetes. And vegans have gone worldwide now. We're watching teenagers that are vegans. It's gone now into even an epidemic. I know of about 5 vegans under 20. I know a 10-year-old that's a vegan. And their parents give them vegan food. Now people look at vegans and go, it's really, really, really healthy. It's carbohydrates. And carbohydrates give you diabetes. They say don't eat sugar. That's all carbs turns to. Glucose. So when you're looking at it, and you know, I've heard 3 or 4 people say to me, we are changing the world with vegan. Vegan is the way of the world, and it will be. and you watch it. Because I have not heard that from just one. I've heard that from 3 different people that do not know each other. And they're our age group. This is huge, and this is where they're going. Because we are still brainwashed, fat is bad. Fat, it can't be there, it's bad, you can't have it. Now, you big bodybuilders, back in the late 60s, early 70s, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, all you big boys, carbohydrates didn't come out into society until 72 on the food chain. They were big fat lovers. They would eat big 4 pieces of Y-bone, 2 chickens, 15 eggs. That was their diet daily. Massive fat and protein. When this guide came in, none of these boys did it. They would have looked at it and thought, what? The people today that go into bodybuilding competitions, they're living on basically a cup of rice, a bit of tuna and almonds. So what's happened is their calorie intake is down. So they go into calorie deficit. So I'm going to explain calorie deficit. That is all on its own another problem. So you can lose weight by eating fat and a lot of it and no carbohydrates and just keep losing weight and keep putting fat in and keep losing weight, and that's how it all works. Now, what happens is when we have calories, so say we are after 1,200 calories a day. Most people that go on a diet, they calorie restrict. So now we'll go on 500 a day. Straight away, metabolism, after a little while, after it realises this is all we're getting, starts to drop because it only needs this amount of fuel because that's all we got. So what happens is they lose weight, but their metabolism's slow, and then they have a cheat day. So that cheat day now turns into 1,200 calories again. So that 700 calories, that is now a plus. The metabolism isn't running at it. So we dump this into the fat cell. Then they're back on board the next day. This has not moved. All right? Because where I'm talking calories, I'm talking carbohydrate pretty much based, because everyone's brainwashed fat's bad. So we've got a dump of fat over here. Now, and this is where I say before, where the glucose builds up, the insulin builds up, they're overweight, the windows aren't clean yet, the cells can't be opened properly yet. They're in the middle of the process of being on this low-cal diet 1 weekend. All right? Had a cheat day. The system's not cleared. We've got glucose in the system. So we're getting bigger. Your calories down, but your metabolism's with it. Now, with what we do, we keep the metabolism up. So if we're on 1,200 calories a day, we stay there with fat. Our metabolism is up. So we may have a 16-hour window where we don't eat, but boy, we fill this in the 8-hour window. We get full in that 8 hours. So with this stays. Now, with your bodybuilders, and they're going into the 12-week meltdown, they're on, by the end, some of them, 50 calories a day. Now, this is for about the last week. That's all that's coming in. So what's this done? So then they come out of comp, and now they're starving, and they're going to now get bigger for the next season. So this now, because they're so hungry, your body adjusts pretty quickly to what you do to it. You start eating 2 burgers a day, you can do it pretty quick. So from here now, they may be going up to 1,600 because they need to get bigger for the next hit when they're going back into comp. So they massively throw it in. But when they come to strip, they've now got more to do. These guys, these days, in the gyms, are not looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger days in the gym. They're just not. And they're belting themselves up doing it. So everyone lives on carbs and live on protein drinks. But society's gone mad in it, and they're everywhere. And everywhere selling them because we've been brainwashed. We did not have protein supplements like we have today back in the 60s. And they were big boys. And they're not even getting close these days. So these guys are coming out of comp. This is a mess. Now they put this 1600 in. And now they're getting bigger, which is fantastic because I've got size. And then go into the next comp. And by the time they strip themselves down, I pretty much look like I did last time, or I got a bit more muscle. They didn't do that. These guys gained 10 kilo of muscle mass. These guys are gaining maybe 1 to 2. It doesn't work. But that's society, and it's brainwashing. And all it is being brainwashed. We have been brainwashed into this. You brainwash your children. You've got to eat vegetables, you've got to eat fruit, you've got to eat this way. And yes, they're vitamin based. You do need vitamins, you do need minerals, you do need stuff. So this food does have it, but it's what part, and then you've got the GI. So your glycemic index is where this really does play too. So with your glycemic index, you've got from 100 down to 0. So anything we say, they say in the industry, under 70, I think it's too high. Everyone that I know that eats under 70 is still overweight. All right, so I say 50 and under. So anything that is 50 based on the GI, I'd say go with. Anything above it, we're looking at glucose, we're looking at insulin, we're looking at everything being shut down, fogged up, not opening. So the GI does make a difference, and it's knowing them low glycemic index foods. Now, if all I am going to eat is the very low glycemic index foods, which is a lot of vegan, I still have a glucose problem. When you have glucose in the system, you will not burn fat. Fat will not it's a secondary fuel. It is not the main fuel unless it has to be the main fuel. And fat can be picked up from anywhere. Glucose is picked up from 2 places, and that's it. And fat, it will find everywhere. So which fuel would you rather run on? Like, it's common sense. Who wants to run on glucose? Because it's only 2 areas. And then when you come out of those 2 areas, you do feel a bit crappy, because the adaptation to burning ketones takes about 2 weeks. Because our bodies are so used to glucose, you're going through like, it's a drug. It's a withdrawal. So it does take about 2 weeks to adapt, and that's where people find it the hardest, especially if they're in the gyms, because that first 2 weeks you'll get quite lightheaded, and I just say to people, ignore it, keep going, it goes away. It takes 2 weeks. You do get that lightheadedness, you do get that, it goes away, just bear with it. It's just the body adapting into picking up the fat cell. And what happens with this is the fat cell will only give you a little bit because it's not used to giving it to you. So the body gets very used to what you do to it, and it stays in what you're doing. So once it realises in 2 weeks, we got no carbs coming really in here, out she comes. So now the fat cell just opens, and it just delivers, and it just keeps delivering. You will never ever get lightheaded, because now you're running on 9 calories for every single thing you're doing. So when you're in the gym, what's the fuel difference between the 4.5? So when I was in the gym, when I was on carbs, you're hitting brick walls. You're like, oh, this is really hard, and it's hard, and it's hard. When you're here, you've just got fuel, and you feel good the whole time. And you're wrecked, but you've got more. And it's quite different. It's a totally different feeling. And because I've done both, I'm not on my own. Everyone's the same. So when you feel that difference, now this takes about 1 to 2 minutes to burn in the gym. So how much are you losing? You're losing so much fat when it comes to serious training. So while you're training, to burn fat instead of glucose, what would you rather burn? So people, walk out of the gym and go, okay, so how long will I burn fat? And it's like, well, how much glucose you got in the body? Who knows that? People don't know that. So I've trained a lot of diabetics. I've trained type 1 and type 2 over all my years of training, which is about 30, with all my aerobic and my PT behind me. When people come in with diabetes, I need to know the numbers. So if someone comes in at 20, say, we can flog them. Because the problem with diabetes is getting the numbers so low. So with someone with diabetes, especially type 1, we try not to go under 2 to 3. If they come in 20, I've got a massive range. I've had them come in at 5. I send them home. We can't go there. Most people don't come in here. All right, because diabetics aren't taught really what's going on. They come in still really high, and we just flog them. So my type 1 diabetes people, they don't come in here. Very, very rare. I've sent one home. Most of them come in at 15, and we take them down to 2 to 3, and they check their blood sugars as they go. And when we get down to here, they're done. And that's the beauty of knowing blood sugars. Type 1 diabetes, they know their system very well. They've normally been diagnosed as children. They know it extremely well. They know how they feel when they're getting too low, and they'll tell you. And they'll say, I'll check my blood sugars. They're all over it. You don't have to do it. They're terrified of where they're going because they've been there and they live it. A type 2 diabetic, they've no idea. They've just ended up here one day, and I know diabetics that have had a kidney transplant, has a 25 reading, and lives on junk food. Had a heart attack, got ulcerated legs, and it's not his food. He's just in bad shape. And it's not like that. You get everything from something. It's a disease. And blood sugars is a symptom. And that's it. So when you know what you're looking at and your calorie, where people go, I'm on a diet, and they say to you, I'm only eating this and this and this, and it's not much food, this is going to suffer. Now, for the metabolism to shut down, it takes 96 hours. People that are on a low-cal diet don't not eat for 96 hours, so it doesn't shut down, but it slows down because it only needs to do what it's used to. The beautiful thing too is, with ketosis, is you get very sharp thinking, and you've got a lot of fuel, and you never get tired, and you can go and go and go and go. So the beautiful thing is, this can go up and up and up and up because you're using the fuel. You will not get fat on ketosis, but it's going to take a lot of doing when it comes to society, because now we're on a vegan run. There's a fad all the time going on, and we've really hit it. When you've got little children wanting to be a vegan and parents going, that's wonderful, that's nuts, because they don't get carbohydrates gives you diabetes. Now, unless that child lives on the lowest GI, lowest. Doesn't work. And what kid does that? Now they're going to all party. And Nan's got Tim Tams. And I can have these. This is sugar, it's vegan. It doesn't work. It does not work. So to fatten a child up, that's very, very, very little and wants to be a vegan, that would work pretty good for a little while. But it is a real problem. I can have quite a decent meal. I can have a beef patty, some salad, a bread roll, and say some potato. When I eat like that, now if you put that on a plate, it looks quite healthy. I am really, really thirsty an hour later, and I just throw down like 2 big glasses of water. And I've done nothing since I've eaten. And I'm not hot. And I'm not training, and I'm not running. That is not normal. I believe that's normal if you're running around and you're training and you need that water. But to have a meal and then you need to drink like this, that's not normal. And that's what carbs do to you. And the problem with that is when you have diabetes, the reason you're going to the doctor to start with is you're urinating a lot. You're thirsty continuously and something's wrong. And you think we have a kidney problem, and we do. The glucose is that huge in the system, the body tells the kidneys, flush it. So we get thirsty. The brain does everything to us, it sorts us out, and it's the only way it can get rid of the glucose in the system. Every person that has been diagnosed with diabetes has had an overabundant thirst that they cannot quench. And that's how they find out they've got it. So a diabetic just doesn't turn up at a doctor and you've got diabetes. You are thirsty and you can't drink enough. And the kidneys are overworking getting rid of the glucose. So we have high glucose, we have high thirst, high urination, and high hunger. They're starving because the glucose isn't getting in the cells. The body is building up with insulin to put the glucose in the cells. The glucose can't get in the cell. So we're sitting here, the brain goes, we need fuel. You're hungry, up goes the insulin, we're hungry, and it keeps going. And the body goes, we've got too much glucose. Kidneys flush it. So you're gonna start drinking. It has to go together. Everything works together. Our bodies are very, very complex and very, very smart, thank God. Because you would combust with glucose and insulin without the fluid intake. It would not work, you would die. Now, with type 1 diabetes, there is such a thing called ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis will kill you, and it can kill you. With ketoacidosis, a type 2 diabetic, they have got this insulin partly moving. A type 1 diabetic does not. There is no insulin being made at all. So if you take a type 1 diabetic off carbohydrates, which means now they don't need insulin, that is a big, big issue. Because some people will think, okay, well, if I don't put carbs in, I don't have to regulate it with insulin. So you take the insulin out, so the body's not making it. But the problem with that is when we burn ketones in a normal body, we burn ketones at a proper rate. So it's a low rate. When a type 1 diabetic burns ketones in the absence of insulin, it's 20 times more acid in it than us. So the pH levels are off the chart, and because they're off the chart, we've got a chemical big imbalance. So ketoacidosis is a killer, and it only wipes out diabetics. And it can hit type 2 diabetics on the very high extreme of being that bad a diabetic now that they're nearly a 1. They're not making insulin. most type 2 diabetics are making it of some sort. There's very low numbers in type 2s that would get ketoacidosis and die doing this, very few, but the type 1s have to be regulated completely by physicians and doctors. They have to. They can't just do this. There is a physician in the States that is a type 1 on a keto diet, has been 16 years, is a marathon runner and a sports freak, and he's done it. You can do it, but you've got to know the ins and outs of that. That is not my area at all. I teach type 2 diabetes to get into this, get your diabetes out completely. You have insulin. The pancreas is working a bit. Don't wait till it's not. And now you need to be removed by a crane. And that is not funny, and it happens to people. We are living it. We are seeing it. We are facing an epidemic, and it's a real good one. We have Alzheimer's, dementia, massively on the rise. That is Diabetes.t, which hasn't come out yet, but it's coming out slowly. There's more and more talk about it. It'll pop out in 2020. And then in 2080, everyone's got dementia at the age of 50. How good's that? Because that's where we're going. And our doctor told us that that age of dementia is getting lower. They say if you have dementia, you've had it for 30 years. Dementia does not come on you. It's a 30-year disease. And it's glucose. It's Diabetes.t. Like, why do we eat this stuff? And when you really look at the human system, there is not a cell in the body that needs carbohydrate at all. There is no necessity for it. None. It's not used anywhere. So fat is put all over the system for protection. If you go to anywhere where there's cold, your Eskimos, they're huge. It's for warmth. Your body will do what it has to do, and you put them back into a heated society and they're just down. Because all they eat is omega-3s. Omega-3 and omega-6 is something else too. Omega-3 stops inflammatory. So this is what people sort of, with omegas, omega-3 is the healthy one. Omega-6, stay away from. That causes inflammation. This fixes inflammation. If you are injured, get as much of this stuff into you as you can. Never take 6. Try to never ever put a 6 into the mouth, because that is an inflamed, it's an inflammatory, it just, the body just doesn't deal with it. And a lot of people think, well, 6 is better than 3 because it's higher. It's not the case. It's the opposite. That's diabetes in a nutshell, how it happens. As you get bigger, them windows, the cell windows get fogged up, it gets a film, the body builds up with glucose, then the insulin takes off, can't get into the cell, brain tells the body you're hungry, up she goes again, up, 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 up. It gets to the point where you're walking in, you're way into this range, you're now on drugs, you're on 3 drugs within 10 years, you're now on insulin, you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you're putting more and more and more food in, it's popped into the freezer's getting more chaos, then they go on a calories restricted diet. So now you open the fridge and there's 3 things in there, and that's all they're putting in. They don't need to open this on a low calorie diet. It's common sense. If you fill this, it gets put into here. If you empty carbohydrate, this comes out. So once you just know that sort of stuff, you've got it. Gastric sleeves, gastric bypasses, they're huge. 90% accuracy rates. 90% of diabetics lose diabetes in 6 weeks. They're finished. Pretty sad when you've got to cut your stomach out. Like, you're left with a walnut, or you go straight from the esophagus straight into the small intestines. But that's where we've got to today. And surgeons do it because they have to, because no one's got it. And they're not taught, don't eat carbohydrates. So that's the really sad bit. And we're really got a problem with all of the system, the way it goes, the way it shuts down, the way it all unfolds. Gastric bypasses is pretty much it now. So with the gastric bypasses, and this is really sad, but what happens is you've got straight into a little walnut of a stomach, right? So before you've got this, you have a certain diet, and it is everything, anything, everything, all of it, more of it, as much as it, and it's good, right? So this becomes this, and then we go in and cut it down to this. This has not changed, other than they've had a drink and a different diet for 2 to 3 weeks before surgery. They die with starvation. They have not at all got used to this. So they lose a lot of weight. So we've gone and done this. The weight's amazing. He looks amazing, okay? How we got there was the food he loved. We all can love carbohydrates. And they're tasty, and they're nice, and they make you fat. And it's not fat that makes you fat. So, someone comes in with one of these. They have to get full quite quick, all right, because they can't eat now. He can have 1 chip, 1 calamari ring, and 1 chicken strip in 1 meal. And it's about 6 hours before they eat. So what have we got? Calorie deficit. So what happens now? Metabolism comes down. All right, in 12 months, this will stretch. But we're looking at maybe 200 calories a day, and that's what his body's going to run on for 1 year, okay? So at the end of the year, when he can stretch this out, their body's only running at this for 1 year. It doesn't change in a week, and it won't change in about 3 to 6 months either. So we end up back here. The next operation is you cut that off and you go straight into the intestine. Now you can't do it, okay? But you've lost your belly. So the biggest problem is they're not taught this. It's come in, we'll give you a gastric sleeve, we'll do the operation, these are the foods you can eat, and this is what you're to live on. So they're living on not much, soups, like pumpkin soup, or soups, which are vegetable, which is carbohydrates. What do carbohydrates do? Make you hungry. What they need to do is they need to fill this up with fat. It's 9 calories per gram. They're full. They're going to be full. And fat is fulfilling, and you're not hungry. If you eat hot chips on bread, you can eat a lot, and then you barrel up, feel like crap, start drinking, and here we go. That's what happens. But if you eat a piece of meat, or a piece of bacon even, or a piece of chicken, you can be full. All right? When I was running in between clients and didn't have time to stop, and I was on my 5th client, and that's a lot of fuel, push, shove, 5 hours long, and I've got 2 minutes, this client's leaving, I've run upstairs, cut a block of cheese and thrown it down my gob, and I am not hungry for 4 hours. And I was starving. Cheese works beautiful on a run and you're starving. I cannot believe what a little block, and I'm talking a little block of cheese, can do to filling this hunger. So if they get, they can live here, what's their source of energy? There's nothing coming in but fat. So you're not going to burn a thing but fat. If you put in glucose, you will not burn fat. And they're not educated in this, but they've got a walnut for a stomach and off you go. And we'll see you at your post-visit in 6 weeks. And when they get you back in 12 months, so what, you didn't do it? Like, really? Now you've come to this level? What's wrong with you? Surgeons do their job, and they do a bloody great job. They're not experts at this. They're experts at you got too fat, you ate too much food. Do they know that bit? They know how to do it, and they're excellent at what they do. People are excellent at what they do because they're passionate about it, and that's what they learn. And there's other people that know more than you, and you need to work it out. You go to your doctor, you've got high blood pressure, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, we need to sort it out. You need surgery. Because they're sitting in front of these people that feel disgusting, failed, overweight, blood pressure. They just feel awful. And we can fix that up. We can give you surgery. And now you've got another problem. Because now you go out for tea and it costs you 35 bucks a head and you can't eat. But you have to pay if you go out for tea. Because you can't sit here if you don't. And these guys can't eat. And then Christmas is coming. And it's really sad to watch. And especially when you really love somebody, it's an awful way to be. That's society. And they're in families. That's what we got. And that's what people have. That's a huge decision. I couldn't imagine it. Do you understand it a bit better?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Because there's not enough education. I know 3 30-year-olds that have been done in the last 6 months. 3. 2 have had the sleeve and 1's done a complete bypass. Anyway, that's it. So that's diabetes.